my role-playing ramblings peeps. So, welcome to episode 5, season 2 of Role-Playing Ramblings, the show where I discuss all things role-playing. Today we're going to discuss spotlighting. This is going to be a tough one for me, because spotlighting is a little weird. So what is a spotlight? A spotlight is something that is a light, kind of like this. I can go like this, whoop, turn it on, and it shines down. So you can see it shining on my head here. It's a spotlight. It's coming down on one spot. And it keeps a narrow beat. Spotlighting and role-playing, in my opinion, is the art of letting a player have their character shine and be an important and integral part of the story. So, while role-playing is a group community effort, I think there has to be a certain amount of individuality that is put forth by the player to create the individual of the character within the story. So how is this separated from the community? And there are a lot of different ways, and we're not going to talk a lot about a lot of the different techniques and the styles. I mean, clearly fighters are going to shine. You know, you want your fighters to kind of shine a little bit more in combat. You want your rogues to shine in a different way than you want your wizards to shine. But I'm not even talking about their roles. I'm really kind of talking about their personalities. Because that's what role-playing, in my opinion, is about: developing character for the players and inserting those characters into the story by the GM in such a fashion that everyone has ownership of the story that gets told. And that's why the story should never be the same twice. So, in order to spotlight, I think you need a few things. One is you need solid backgrounds for the characters. Why is a solid background important for character? Well, because in order to spotlight, I think you kind of want the character to have some kind of personality that is already established. For example, a fighter who's in combat may or may not kill a person or individual or beast that the party has basically handicapped or taken control of, wounded to the point where they can't fight. That would depend on the character's personality, which in some games is partially defined by alignment. So what do you need to have a good background, a solid background? Well, first you need the character. You've got to create the character. You've got to create the role. You have to have an understanding of the character's role, not only within the role-playing game, but within your storyline. I think that roles are not totally dependent on the role of how they're created in a player's handbook or a player's manual, but also in how they are to be developed within the GM's story. Because there's a certain amount of integral unity that helps create a certain amount, I should say that helps create cohesion among your group of players. So, for example, one character tends to be the healer more than others. But how is that important to your story? Some stories don't need a healer. So is that player deficient in some way? Maybe, maybe not. That's between you and your community. So then I think another super important thing in spotlighting is helping the player create an agenda. The GM and the players should always talk outside of game. I mean, not always, not like every day. But they should talk enough outside of game that they can adjust an agenda. Like every individual, like, okay, so a good example is you go to work every day and you have 10 coworkers. Some of those coworkers are pretty aggressive. Some are not. Some just like going to work, clocking in and clocking out, doing what they have to do to survive or make them happy, whatever motivates them, right? Others want to become leaders and they want to take the torch, carry the flame, and lead the way. They want to be they're first in to the trenches. They're the first ones and the last ones to leave, right? Uh, but I don't necessarily even just mean leadership. I mean an agenda. Even those people that just go in and clock in and out, they have an agenda. They have other interests. They have interests of things they want to do. I mean, they might just go in and clock out and kind of be under the radar. But I'm sure, like I cooked. I went into work. I clocked in and I clocked out. And I didn't necessarily push to lead as like a chef or a sous chef, even though I desired it. But I know that without culinary experience or a culinary degree, it was going to be a lot more difficult. So I just took every opportunity I could to learn things. And what are you doing? My kitten. Hold on. Come on. My role-playing kitten. She's turning the pages of D&D books, and that's my face. So, and then I think even more important is a strong character background. And a couple years ago, I did a whole series on rounding out your character and making a character background. So, but I think if you think of an onion, to put it in real quick terms, think of an onion. You peel off the skin. That's one layer. You peel off another layer. An onion, they call them leaves. So you have an onion. Every time you cut the onion in half and you pull back, every one of those is a layer, right? So you have all these different layers to your personality. That's, I think, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I think every character needs a minimum of 3 things that happen in their life before they met the group to create certain influences. It could be, your brother was kidnapped as a kid, so it affects you somehow. It could be your parents died while you were young and you were orphaned. It makes you think about different things. It could be you grew up on the streets. They could be pretty vague. And the reason why I'm saying these things is because then, as a GM, it gives you those opportunities. You have this knowledge to use as like a database that will allow you to create those moments in your story where that player has a chance for his character to have the spotlight put on him. Now, in some ways, if you look at role playing as a theater event, there's actors and supporting actors, right? So sometimes you're only going to be able to do this in the supporting actor kind of fashion. But I think by creating these types of things for your players, you're going to create a much fuller experience, and it'll, especially if you can tie those things into knowing their agenda, it'll help the character's journey of change and development, which is what I think. I mean, this is probably another topic altogether, but players, at least, okay, let me back up. When I write stories, one of the key things that you need to try and do when you write a story is show the development of the character within the words of the story. Not to tell the development or tell the people how it's changed, but to show and demonstrate the change. A good example is, well, you can see the change from, this is actually really broad, but in Lord of the Rings, you can see the change of Bilbo. Oh, I said Bilbo. We'll go to the Hobbit. You can see the change of the transformation that Bilbo makes in the Hobbit, which really doesn't get shown. I mean, it gets shown in a dark way. Well, I'm thinking of the movies because I watched them more recently than I read the books. But Bilbo really shows his transformation a lot in the Fellowship of the Rings. And I think it's your job to kind of help the players come to the conclusion of how they're going to do that. I think every player should have a certain amount of tension that is affecting their decisions and motivating them to make those decisions. Because it helps bring that circle of, I started here, I have this missing in my life, or I have this thing here. Or in the case of like Bilbo Baggins, you started here as la 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 la, and then you go to this, I'm going to say, beast that's possessed by an obsession that turns your soul a little bit darker. And I think that is an important part of role-playing that probably a lot of us miss. It is not easy to do. It takes a lot of work. But I think spotlighting helps characters want to do that. And that's why spotlighting is important. Now, spotlighting can be dangerous too. You can easily spotlight on a character too much because they've made it easy to do that. And that makes it a little tough. Some characters, spotlighting, it's really easy to spotlight the character, especially if they become influential in the focus of the story. So if you have a character that's become so influential in the story that if that player can't make it, you don't want to play, you probably need to spotlight on some other people for a while. Just to help players push themselves along and prevent the player, for lack of a better way of saying it, getting a big head, having a big ego. Keep that character in check. Even though the character is an important part of the story, that character wouldn't be there without the other characters and without the other players for sure. Again, it comes back. I've said this a lot this season. It comes back to its community. You have to keep your community happy, and you have to preserve it. Which that'll be another one at a later date. So, to recap, spotlighting is letting players have their characters shine for parts of the story that are important and influential to their storyline as well as your storyline. Because character stories are not necessarily different than your story, but they are certainly unique within it. And I think that every character or every player should be trying to make their character have some kind of a transformation. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be Bilbo Baggins big, or anything like that. Because not every character is going to be the leader all the time. And that pretty much wraps it up. Thanks for watching, guys. This has been episode 5 of season 2. I almost wanted to say season 4, which I haven't filmed yet. And like I said, thanks for watching. I really, really enjoyed doing these. I wasn't going to do them this year. That's my little confession. So if they seem a little rushed, they might be a little bit rushed this year. But I had a lot of people in the last couple of months ask me when I was going to air them. And so I sat down and I wrote them out. And I had a lot of fun again. I'm glad that I was nudged. Please check out my Kickstarter for Season 6. I made a card game for all of you that are going to Gen Con this year. It's something that you could play while you're in line, and you should be able to have this card game before Gen Con. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day. If the holiday season isn't over before this goes live, have a good holiday.